Hello everyone, my name is Alex and today I'm wearing Ukraine t-shirt, which means you on the channel Alex from Ukraine. And today we are joined by a very special guest, OSINT analyst, YouTube creator and author Ryan McBeth. Thank you for joining us today, Ryan.
Well, thank you for having me again.
So how do you think the Russian elite and the international community would react if Ukrainian special forces managed to capture Putin directly from his bunker and bring him to trial as a war criminal?
What would the international response be? I don't know. That's a really good question. I certainly think that you'd have people in the West who were grateful for that. But you'd also have, the usual suspects, China, South Korea, saying this is an illegal action or whatever, right? So that you'd probably see two different reactions depending on which way you go politically. Whether they could actually do that is kind of up in the air. That's a pretty big question. Putin is constantly changing locations. He has multiple offices that look exactly alike. I think he has three different offices, so you never know exactly where he is. But I certainly think the international community would probably be very grateful if that occurred.
Let's move on to your recent video about Iran. If Iran's experience is a preview of what could happen in Taiwan, could China, using its advanced electronic warfare capabilities, actually shut down the sky completely rather than just create temporary disruptions?
I think it's certainly possible. Yeah, it depends on how much territory China could control. During the initial invasion, it might be kind of difficult to perform any kind of electronic warfare against the entire country. But Taiwan is a heck of a lot smaller than Iran, right? So if they were able to do that, it would most likely shut off the island completely, because we're talking no fiber, right? Because odds are China would cut the fiber. And then also, cutting Starlink, it would require, oh boy, maybe 900 to 1,000 balloons that are constantly jamming. And insurgent forces would cut those balloons or fight against the bases that are monitoring that electronic warfare. I've often said that Taiwan is basically Afghanistan with leaves, right? So you have this mountainous region, and that's where all of the Taiwanese troops could hang out, and any Chinese or any Taiwanese insurgency as well could hang out in the mountains, where hopefully they have resupply, they can resupply, reconstitute themselves. It's really hard to view, to find people who are under tree cover. That's very hard to do with drones, even with drones that are looking through infrared. It's difficult to do. So it's certainly possible that Taiwanese forces could use the mountains to rest and refit, and then head into the countryside, perform attacks, cut various balloons, or attack the electronic warfare sites directly, send out data, and then fall back into the mountains. Insurgencies are really, really tough to deal with.
If a regime's goal isn't a total internet blackout, but simply slowing down video transmission, could Starlink lose that battle due to its sensitivity to packet loss?
I'm sure there's ways of doing that. I mean, you're gonna have to develop either like a faster frequency hopping. So radios, if you take this pen, right, and this is the band of frequencies that you can transmit on. So the way a lot of radio communication, or frequency hopping radio communications work, is you hop up and down this band to random points on this band. And every single radio transmitter and receiver is hopping at the exact same moment. And that's one of the reasons we have GPS. GPS is really PNT, precision navigation in time. And so if everyone's clock is on the same exact clock, everyone knows when to frequency hop up and down the spectrum, then it makes it very difficult to jam because you have to jam up and down that spectrum at the same rate as well. You might be able to jam one part of the spectrum, but then when the radio gets to that jammed part, it won't be able to transmit. And then when it moves to the next part of the spectrum, then that packet will be reset, right? So it has to jam at the same frequency hopping rate that you're transmitting and receiving at. So it makes it a lot more difficult to do. So Starlink can maybe increase the frequency of the not the frequency, meaning it could increase the time between hops. There might be some other things that they could do to actually increase the speed of transmission. But that's kind of on Starlink, and they're certainly not going to tell anyone how they're doing it.
Given that Iran sold missiles to Russia for $3 billion, are we now seeing a reverse exchange of technologies, where Moscow helps Tehran improve its Starlink jamming techniques based on battlefield experience from the war in Ukraine?
It's certainly possible that Russia would do that. However, Iran is a heck of a lot bigger than the battlefield in Ukraine, so they might trade that technology for Iranian missiles. But kind of the question now is, okay, you have the technology. The next question is, do you actually have the funds to build it? I just did a video. I'm probably going to post it in the next few minutes, but I did a video on how Iran is supposed to get paid. Like their government payroll drops on the 20th. And technically it's the first of the month for Iran. They go by a different calendar, but it drops on the 20th. So if people don't get paid, then it's a lot easier for people in the regime to take their guns that they're pointing at protesters and turn them around and point them at the regime, because look, you might be a loyal regime follower, but you still have to feed your family, right? And if you have a gun and you don't have any money, pretty soon you're going to have money, right? Like that's just kind of how this works. So I think it's the big kind of question comes down to what happens on the 20th when if people don't get paid, and does Iran have the finances to build jammer systems that can essentially cover all the needed areas of their country? There's a finite amount of money, and they could print more money, but then that creates inflation, makes everything more expensive, which is a huge problem in Iran right now. So kind of the next question is, all right, well, if I have to choose between paying my regime supporters or creating jammer systems, that's an easy choice, right? You have to pay your regime supporters. So I think that's something that they're going to have to take into account.
Donald Trump recently said that US military is considering several very strong options, including cyber attacks and direct strikes by the United States or Israel. When asked about Iranian threats or retaliation, he responded, if they do it, we'll hit them in ways they've never experienced before. Yeah. How do you see this situation developing from here?
Boy, that's an excellent question. What I could see is the United States jamming Iranian communications. I can see them striking radio and TV stations. That would be an option as well. There would be, I would say, another option might be to leaflet drops, telling people, hey, here's how to make improvised weapons. Or it could be leaflet drops on the Artesh, the Iranian army, encouraging them to defect to the side of protesters. So there's quite a few ways that the U.S. could help out the Iranian people.
Mm, if we back to Russia, I want to ask you, what the worst nightmare for Russian babushkas who loved Putin?
What's the worst nightmare? Oh, I really don't know. That's kind of a tough one. I would imagine kind of the worst nightmare might be losing their pension, right? And you have people who kind of depend on the Russian regime for their pension, and if every month prices are increasing in Russia, I believe they have an inflation of about 20%. If that's happening, then pensioners might certainly get very upset with the government. But that's one of the issues here is, what does a pensioner do? Is a pensioner going to go out and protest in the cold? All right, probably not. And I don't think that Putin's government really cares about the rights of their pensioners, especially since Putin has essentially installed himself in power. He's going to be very difficult to dislodge. So yeah, I don't really see that as I can see it being their worst nightmare, but I'm not quite sure what they can do about it.
And finally, do you think Putin could ultimately betray Iran the same way he did with Venezuela?
Well, I mean, you always Venezuela. I don't want to say he betrayed Venezuela. It's just, what could he do about it? Is he going to send troops? Is he going to send aircraft? It's not really a betrayal. It's just kind of reality, right? I think any authoritarian leader, they don't have allies. They have mutual interests, right? And there was essentially, Venezuela was very useful as a country that he could kind of support a little bit, just as like a way to embarrass the United States. But once Venezuela kind of outlived its usefulness, or grew too unimportant to really back, then why the heck should I continue to support this regime? It doesn't really, the cost is too high to kind of support this. So Russia doesn't really have the troops to help Venezuela. It can't really spare any aircraft to go help Venezuela. The only thing it can do is launch a couple of missiles at people who are totally unrelated to the conflict.
Today, we are joined by an exceptional guest, OSINT analyst, author, and YouTube creator Ryan McBeth. Ryan, thank you so much for being with us, for your thoughts, for your analysis, and we hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.